Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
I have to admit I'm a little nervous, but I'm very happy.
I'm
happy
very
to
nervous.
have you. You're nervous. We both can be nervous together. Well, one of the frequent comments I received from friends when I told them that I was interviewing you today was, "Oh my God, I have lost hours of my life in front of my PC to Civilization." And I can say that I feel like I've lost boyfriends in that way because it's been like a big fight. Like, are we gonna go out to dinner? Or are we gonna I'm gonna sit and watch you play? But that's a testament to how engaging this game has been and how beloved it is for what is now looking like generations. For those of you who may not be familiar with the game, for those of you who in the audience who haven't come across it, it is a turn-based history strategy game where a player single-handedly guides the development of a civilization over the course of a millennia, from the Stone Age to the Space Age. The game feels uncannily accurate, as if it actually represents the way the world could have unfolded if the course of history were nudged over just a little, obviously by your actions. And I think the audience here would love to hear, if I could step back a little bit and start at the very beginning and understand from you what inspired Civilization.
Well, Civilization is now, actually this year, celebrating its 25th anniversary. So it was created in 91, and at that time, games were kind of changing. Up till then, games had been about blowing things up, basically. The bigger the explosions, the better. But SimCity had come out, a couple of other games had come out that kind of illustrated that building things was almost as much fun as blowing them up. And so SimCity was kind of an inspiration, and we had actually created a game called Railroad Tycoon previous to that, which had that same kind of start small, create something of your own design, kind of really infuse your own creativity into the game. And that was, people responded to that, and we said, well, what's bigger than railroads? You know, what's huge and epic? How about the history of civilization? We should put that into a game.
A little bit of a leap from railroads to the history.
A huge ego in those days. So we started to prototype the game, and it just kind of came together, and we said, you know, what do we need? Oh, technology, diplomacy, we need money, we need military, we need, just cram it all in there. And it actually started off as more of a real-time game, kind of like SimCity, where you zone things. But when we made the switch to turn-based, all of a sudden everything kind of clicked together. And you really gave the player the time to think about what they were doing. And they could project into the future what would be the consequences of their actions. Like if I build, if I build a temple, what's going to happen? If I explore this area, if I make peace with these guys, if I go to war. So the player is actually playing the game not where it's actually happening now, but in the future.
You have to be thinking ahead.
You're constantly weighing all these trade-offs and making these interesting decisions. And that turned out to be the heart of the game. And the fact that you were always thinking ahead meant there was no good time to stop, because you're kind of anticipating that next cool thing that you've got going on. So it turned out that's kind of the core of this one more turn phenomenon that I'm sorry about your boyfriends, but that's what they were experiencing. I hope you can understand now.
Yes, I mean, you can't put it down. You just one more thing, and that's the brilliance of it. Yeah. So I'm curious, when you started working on that game, where were you in your life? How old were you, and where were you working at the time?
I was working at Microprose Games. I'd been probably making games for 6 or 7 years at that point. We had done some military simulations. Pirates, had done Pirates before that, which started to kind of branch us away from just kind of blowing things up and more kind of creating a story. I think that's the other thing that kind of resonates with Civilization, is there's a unique story to every game. When you finish a game, you kind of look back and you can see that one little tiny starting point and really appreciate how far you've come from there. So Pirates kind of had that story quality to it. Railroad Tycoon, again, growing. And then finally with Civilization, I think we created kind of what we've been working towards. But I've been making games for probably 6 or 7 years before that.
And did you start off working on Civilization on yourself? Was it like a passion project? You doing the art, the coding? What did the team look like?
In those good old days, as we call them, teams were small. Probably 7 or 8 people worked on Civilization in total. And at the beginning, it was just me. I did all the art. We had recently jumped over to the IBM PC computer, which had 640K of memory, which was totally awesome in those days. and 16 colors, maybe even 256 colors we could use. So it wasn't as hard to prototype stuff in those days because the resources were limited. So for quite a while I worked kind of on my own, prototyping the ideas. As I mentioned, it started off as real time and then it switched over to turn-based. I actually stopped development of Civ and did covert action in the middle of it and then kind of came back to Civilization.
Right, it took a long time for it to get released.
It had to percolate for a while.
You had to figure it out.
But we felt we had something really cool. It was different from the other games that were out there, so we really didn't know how it would do. We had no expectation. I mean, if you had told me then that 25 years later there'd be 5 or 6 versions of Civilization out there, my head would have exploded. So we just kind of put the game out there, and there was no internet. We got letters, and we got actual letters back, but that was the only kind of feedback that we got was like, and these letters had this kind of almost this standard format was like, "Dear Sid, I'm playing your game Civilization. I really like it. It's a lot of fun. By the way, here are all the things you should change about it." And then third paragraph was, if you're looking for any game designers, I'm available.
I'm sure you inspired a lot of game designers out there in the future.
There certainly are a lot out there today. So yes, that's
okay.
So I would like to claim that we were the first viral virus that happened, because even before the internet, it was really word of mouth and people talking to each other. Just like that. That really made the game popular because it really wasn't advertised a lot, but people who played it kind of got hooked on it and told their friends, and it became viral.
So marketing was actually quite different back then than it is now.
There were things called magazines that we put things called advertisements into, and there were user groups and things like that. There were stores that sold computer games.
Well, I'd love to talk about the community that was created around that. I mean, the community continues.
Yes.
What do you think it was about what is about the game that fosters that kind of interaction and community building?
Well, I think when you have an experience that kind of sticks with you, and a lot of Civ players remember an incident, when Gandhi nuked them, for example. It's like, I always remember that time that, there's something that happened in the game that resonates with them and they remember. And when you have an experience like that, you want to share that with other people. And I think with Civ 2, we introduced the idea of modding, and shortly after that, the omnipresent internet showed up. And then there was an opportunity to create this community and to connect with other Civ players. And with Civ 2, with modding, you could create your own maps, your own units, things like that. So the community actually, since that point, has been a very significant part of the whole Civ experience, is connecting with other players and things like that.
So tell me also about a multi-generational aspect of this. So you have players who've been playing for 25 years. If they started when they were 14 or 15 or 20, you got a time now they're playing with their kids.
That's something that I saw for the first time at our Firaxis, which is an event that we bring in a lot of our fans to kind of meet designers and developers and do some presentations. But for the first time, I was seeing these kind of multi-generational, a father and a daughter, or a father and son, mother, that were kind of sharing the experience of Civ. And, almost brought tears. It was kind of a wow moment, because you always think of Civ players, as people with no friends kind of stare, in front of their computer. Now to see that they'd gone out and had families was like, really a relief to me, because I thought I had...
That's right. They can't blame you.
That's right.
They can't blame you.
You see, there's life after Civ.
Yeah, but it is a game that can bring people together, too.
Yes.
I mean, you can share their experiences. You can build together.
Again, with turn-based, you can take as much time as you want. You can, talk it over or whatever, so certainly there's that opportunity.
I'd love to talk a little bit about your approach to designing the game from an engagement standpoint, from a content standpoint. There's been a lot of question of whether Civ is an educational game, whether it was something that was intentional. How you obviously have woven in moments in history with the accuracy, and it was important to you. But which comes first?
Fun. Fun always comes first in our game development. I kind of make a distinction between education and learning. That I think learning is a component of almost every video game, and even if you play Tetris, you're learning how to fit little squares together, and you're always expecting to get better, you know, to beat that high score or get higher on that.
We talk about that as mastery, right? From an educational standpoint.
And that really requires learning. So I think learning is a part of any video game experience, and that's why people play, is, you know, to get better, to get that sensation of getting better. And that wasn't a deliberate design decision in Civ. We kind of joke that we do our research in the kids section of the library. Maybe you remember libraries. Because we want you to be able to start playing with the common knowledge that everybody has. You know, you probably realize that electricity is going to be handy. You know, discovering the wheel is probably going to be useful at some point along the line. So we don't want you to have to read every history book or the same history book that I read to be able to play the game. But maybe we're going to intrigue you to learn a little more about these historical characters that you run into and things like that. So the gameplay is really about creating your own story, but in a world that feels real enough that it feels important, that your story is an important story. So I think those things come together to create a fun learning experience. You know, in my mind, education is perhaps something different. Being educated is something somebody does to you.
Yeah,
learning is something you do to yourself.
Friends of mine at Eline Media have talked about a gateway versus a pathway to education and learning, and this seems to be that gateway where you can spark interest. That I do know of, many people who have said to me that they fell in love with world history through playing Civ because it was accessible, and it gave them also, you have the sense of agency because you go in and play around with what's happening in the world.
It's your story. I think that's what makes it more compelling. And the original Civilization and a number of them after that actually came with like a 200-page manual where there was a lot of more material about, again, world history, about different leaders and things like that. And it kind of was a complement to the game. It was they were both important, both parts, the game itself, but also the ability to dig deeper into things that interested you, and if it inspired people to be interested in history, things like that, that's great. And we invented the Civilopedia right in the game where you could kind of go and click on a button and see more information. So yeah, we felt that learning and allowing the player to feel smarter was part of the satisfaction and the appeal of the game.
I've heard you called it stealth learning.
It's stealth because we've been very quiet. Yes, we've been shy. We don't want to pitch this as an educational product because the fun is the initial focus of it. But if you happen to learn something along the way, that's fine. Don't feel bad about that.
Absolutely. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the choices that you've made about engagement, and at what point did you realize that this is something that had longevity beyond? And you said you didn't think out to Civ 2, 3, 4, 5, but at what point did you realize that this was something that was clicking and that you should be thinking that way?
It was a shock. I have to admit, these stories about dropping out of school or, we didn't realize we'd created this monster at the time because we were making a fun game and we knew it was fun, but there was nothing in the development of it that kind of distinguished it from Pirates or Railroad Tycoon, or it just kind of came together as a fun game. And we were very, I wish we had been able to plan it all out and say we knew it, from the beginning. But a lot of things just kind of came together. The gaming world was ready for strategy at that time. I like to say we made the world safe for strategy because before that, strategy kind of was a dirty word in gaming. It was, associated with war games that took hours to set up, and strategy was slow and boring. Now we have real-time strategy, turn-based strategy. We have all sorts of strategy. So strategy is a good thing these days. But we were at a point where the gaming world was ready for something a little bit new, and we were able to kind of provide that, I think, with Civilization. We had learned over time how to make better and better games, I think. And having done Railroad Tycoon, we learned that this idea of multiple simple systems interacting to create a wondrous complexity was really powerful. because each of the individual systems in Civ, whether it's the military system or the economic system, are really easy to understand. You're not trying to understand how the game works. You know how the game works, but you're putting these pieces together in a special way where they interact to create something that every time is going to be
They're
different.
individual systems, but they all interact with each other and they affect each other.
Right, and the map is different. Who you run into is different. So each game presents you with a different set of challenges that you approach with the same set of rules. So you know how to play, but you know that every experience is going to be different. And I think part of the fun of Civ is anticipating, how is this story going to end? Early on, you start to predict, well, this guy is going to be trouble. This is, I should go over and explore over there. And then you get to see whether your predictions pan out or not. So there's a lot of stuff that I wish I could say we knew from the beginning was going to work, but we're very fortunate that it turned out to work. All I can say is we played the game to death as we developed, and I think that's part of why it turned out pretty good.
We had a session today about failure, and I'm curious about along the way, were there moments where you wish that you could have done something differently, or you fixed in Civ 2 or 3?
We made a bunch of mistakes along the way that I think we took out. Initially, the map was twice as big, although today, Civ players can't get a big enough map. But we had a second tech tree. We had a bunch of stuff that, as we played, we realized it's a little too much. We got to kind of keep this playable because Civ is already 10 or 20 hour a game. But I think that in terms of mistakes, we have what we try to do is identify our mistakes early. So I have a hard drive with about 20 games on it that I prototyped, for weeks or a couple of months, and put away because
we haven't seen yet.
No, and
will we
you
ever
never
see them?
will. You never will, because they're not good. They're not fun. So
Yet.
we try to identify our failures early and shoot them.
So, what about Civ 6? What can we look ahead to? Some new things that you've added to that?
Sure. Civ 6, we have one of the challenges we have is how do you make a game with the number 6 on it? That means you've already made 5 games, So how do you come up with a 6th version of a game that's kind of as understood and the community has analyzed Civ to death, and it's a wonderful community, but they're always watching what we do. So we kind of have a rule, which is the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 rule, which is that 1/3 of the next iteration of Civ is going to be the kind of classic core that we know works. 1/3 is going to be ideas that we tried in probably the previous version, but we can do a little better. We're going to improve on some of the aspects of it. And then 1/3 is going to be new things that we haven't done before. So we're trying to keep our solid, supportive fans happy by keeping it to be truly a Civ game. But we also know that we need to introduce some new features, and that if we can keep it true to the essence of Civ, that's really what's going to keep the product going. So in Civ 6, one of the really, I think, transforming features of Civ 6 is that we've now spread out the city into multiple tiles, right, so that you can have a financial district, a scientific district, a military district. And how you lay out your city in that way is significant. It has an impact. We've also changed the way combat works to kind of have a hybrid of 1 unit per tile, being able to attach support units and extra units to. This might get a little technical, but
we love it. Please keep going.
So the military part of the game has become a little more interesting and in depth. So it's kind of keeping the core of the game, but finding ways to take all those systems and make them a little more interesting, make those decisions, give you a little more to think about, and I think that's Civ 6 also. It has. We've looked at multiplayer pretty hard because that's always been one of the challenges of Civ is to take a game that is giving the player as much time as they want to think about things. How do you translate that to a multiplayer world? So, kind of dealing with some of those issues that are part of the Civ world.
Well, that's exciting. I mean, it's exciting to hear you talk about what's new and what's coming up, as knowing that you've been making games for 25 years, or 25 So 32 years?
Probably,
Right,
yes.
32 years. What gets you excited still about making new games? Like, is there anything left to get excited about?
Yes, there's lots to get excited about. To me, it's a creative process. I mean, I wake up in the morning and I write down like 5 or 10 things. These are the ideas I've just had about whatever project I'm working on. So I'm anxious to get to work, to try them out, prototype them, see if they work or don't work. And it's starting from this raw lump of clay and watching it turn into a beautiful civilization or whatever. There's an element of what's going to happen today. I hope perhaps like playing Civ. You know, it's like what am I going to discover today? What am I going to learn today? How am I going to make this prototype better today? And that's compelling because there's no guarantees. My ideas this morning might have to take them out at the end of the day, but watching it grow is kind of the reward for me, and I think that's what kind of keeps me going day after day.
Knowing that you wake up every morning with ideas. I love
I don't know
that.
where they come. You know, it's. I think overnight my brain is percolating
That's great.
the game or whatever.
Well, I know that you have a special announcement to make today.
We do have a special announcement
And
today.
you have some friends
I'd
that
like
you
to-
might bring up to on the stage?
Yes, I'd like to invite a couple.
This is very
some
exciting.
friends
This is all
out.
surprise for everyone. I think they're back here if you'd like to make the
All
introductions.
right. We have Connie Yowell, who is the CEO
Yes,
of
of Glass Lab.
LRNG and Glass Lab, and Strauss Zelnick, Chairman and CEO of Take-Two Interactive.
Thank you. All right, please have a seat. So, what brings all of you here today on my stage?
Well, we would like to introduce the fact that we're working with Glass Lab on a Civ educational product. This will be a version of Civilization that will be designed for the educational market, probably high school. This is actually something that a lot of teachers have asked for. You know, we want to use Civ in the classroom, but we need these extra things. You know, we need the ability to track. We need the ability to teach students how to play. And that's something we haven't really been able to provide, but some teachers have kind of just done it on their own.
Yeah, they
but
have.
we really see a lot of potential in supporting that initiative and making it much easier for that to happen. So these folks here.
Is there a particular civilization that you are basing this on?
You can play, as in Civ, you can play a range of civilizations.
Right.
No, we're not limiting. That's part of what Civ is about, is making your own story. So we're trying to, not limit the players.
That is exciting indeed. Maybe we can have Connie talk a little bit about Glass Lab and Learning's role in this.
Sure, thank you, Susanna. And I have to say, I'm both thrilled and humbled to be here, and I can't thank you enough for this partnership. Some of you are familiar with Glass Lab. Glass Lab was founded in 2012 with funding from the MacArthur Foundation and the Gates Foundation in partnership with the Entertainment Software Association, Institute of Play, ETS, and Pearson. And it was created because we knew at that time that the most amazing learning experiences, the learning experience of the 21st century, are games. And that we were having a really hard time trying to figure out how to help teachers and schools understand that too. And so we needed a nonprofit intermediary that could sit between game companies and extraordinary game designers and teachers and schools and really help to create the kind of supports both in those games and around them that would allow them to be implemented in schools. So Glass Lab provides data analytics, curriculum, it integrates assessments to ensure so that teachers know that games are meeting Common Core and immediate feedback to students. And so we are hoping and we are planning to be able to have it up on our platform by 2017 and in schools. And I can't think of a better game design partner and game and company with Take-Two and Strauss Zelnick, who's also chairman of ESA, to be joining with in this effort.
Thanks so much. This is incredibly exciting. As Connie said, I get to wear two hats tonight. I'm responsible for Take-Two Interactive, which is the parent company of Firaxis and many other beloved labels of the business. And I'm here on behalf of the Entertainment Software Association. We're fond of saying at our company that we try to create the most high-quality products in the business. We also say that we're not just in the business of entertainment. We're in the business of creating art. and we know as well that we can be involved with education. This is an extraordinary opportunity to be involved with just that. Civilization is one of the most amazing products that we're fortunate enough to have in our roster, and I can say at Sid Can't, we're really grateful to the genius of Sid Meier and the entire team at Firaxis. This is the biggest product that GlassLab has ever been involved with. This is a title that shipped over 34 million units. That's a very big deal. To be able to bring out a version of that can be used really as an educational tool allows us to fulfill our mission. Our mission is not just to purvey entertainment, although it is, and not just to create a really interesting place for our creative folks to work at, which it is, or not just to take care of our shareholders, which we need to do to be able to do this sort of thing, but it's to be engaged with our consumers in a way that really enhances their lives, not just with entertainment, but in this instance with education. So we're immensely grateful for the opportunity. I want to thank you all. And Sid, we're just so proud and so thrilled. Thanks.
Thank you.
Big round of applause.
Thank you.
We're excited. Well, thank you for joining us, Connie and Strauss. And Sid, thank you so much for talking with me for the half an hour. We're going to take a minute and take some photographs, if you don't mind. I'm going to ask you to stay on the stage. But as we wrap up our first day, we hope you enjoyed Games for Change Festival. And I hope you all will join us at the awards ceremony, which is going to be taking place at Slate down the street. There's some information about the event. If you haven't signed up yet, you can go to the front desk and find out how to register for that. But we hope you all see you there in just a little while. So thank you again.